Human soldier claimed alien princess as war spoils. He never expected what came next. The war ended without a victory parade, without cheering crowds or banners in space. It ended with silence, broken only by damaged ships drifting above the gray world of Keth Prime. Human fleets and Cathari vessels hovered at a careful distance from each other, weapons powered down but not forgotten. Both sides were tired. Both sides had lost more than they admitted. Staff Sergeant Elias Rourke stood on the landing platform with his helmet tucked under his arm, wishing more than anything that he was somewhere else. He was not a hero. He had not led a charge or destroyed an enemy flagship. He had spent most of the war moving supplies, fixing broken systems, and making sure other soldiers had what they needed to survive. He had survived mostly by being careful. That was why it made no sense to him that he was standing here. Around him, alien figures moved with slow, deliberate grace. The Cathari were tall and slender, their skin marked with faint glowing lines that shifted with their emotions. Their armor was ceremonial now, polished and heavy with symbols of rank and history. At the center of the platform stood a group Elias had been told to wait for, though no one had explained why. The human commander beside him cleared her throat. "Sergeant Rourke," she said quietly, "this is complicated." Elias resisted the urge to sigh. Everything about this war had been complicated. A Cathari official stepped forward. His voice came through a translator, calm and formal. "By the ancient accords of the Concordance, the cessation of hostilities requires a ritual acknowledgement of defeat. The bloodline of the High Throne must be placed under the claim of the opposing force." Elias frowned. "Placed under the what?" The official's glowing lines pulsed softly. "Claim, custodianship, war spoils in your language." Elias felt his stomach drop. The human commander stiffened. "We discussed this. Humanity does not." "The ritual is symbolic," the official interrupted. "No harm, no force. The one claimed is protected by the honor of the claimant. It prevents further war." Elias opened his mouth to say that this sounded like someone else's problem, but before he could speak, another Cathari stepped forward. She was different from the others. Where their movements were controlled, hers were steady but tense. Her eyes were sharp, her posture proud despite the situation. The markings on her skin formed a complex pattern Elias had never seen before. "This is Princess Salith," the official said, "heir to the High Throne." Elias almost dropped his helmet. The commander turned slowly and looked at him. There was apology in her eyes. "Sergeant, by proximity and rank, the claim defaults to you unless formally refused." "Refused?" Elias said quickly. "I refuse." The Cathari official tilted his head. "Refusal signifies dishonor and rejection of the ceasefire ritual." Elias blinked. "You're telling me if I say no, the war starts again?" "Symbolically," the official replied. "Then practically." Elias looked at the princess. She met his gaze without fear, but there was something else there, expectation. She had already accepted this moment in her own way. He thought of the war, of the people who would die if it began again, of soldiers who would never go home. He swallowed. "Fine," he said. "I accept." The words felt heavy, like they did not belong to him. The Cathari official raised a ceremonial device and recorded the moment. "The claim is acknowledged. The princess is under the custody of Staff Sergeant Elias Rourke of Humanity." Salith stepped forward. She bowed her head once stiffly. In her culture, Elias later learned this was not submission. It was recognition. He didn't know what to do. "Okay," Elias said awkwardly. "So, hi." Her eyes narrowed slightly, clearly confused by the casual tone. Within an hour, the news had spread. Across the platform, whispers followed them. Among the humans, there was disbelief. Among the Cathari, there was quiet horror. Elias escorted Salith onto a human transport shuttle. He expected resistance. He expected anger. He did not expect her to sit calmly and begin observing everything. "You are not what I expected," she said after several minutes. "That makes two of us," Elias replied. "Look, I want to be very clear. You're not a prisoner. You're not property. This is protective custody at best." She studied him. "That is not how the ritual functions." "Then your ritual is about to have a bad day," Elias said. On the human ship, arrangements were made quickly. Salith was given private quarters, access to medical care, and unrestricted movement within secure areas. Guards were present, but they were instructed to treat her as a guest. She noticed everything. She noticed that no one bowed to Elias. That officers questioned his decisions openly. That he deferred to people of lower rank when they knew more than he did. This confused her more than anything else. In Cathari culture, claiming someone placed the claimant above all question. Power flowed downward, unquestioned and absolute. Elias had power over her according to her laws, but he did not act like it. On the second day, she confronted him. "You have the right to command me," she said. "Why do you not use it?" Elias looked up from a data pad. "Because I don't want to. That is not an answer. It's the only one I've got." She folded her arms. "You could order me confined, you could restrict my knowledge, you could use me to force political concessions." "And that would make me what?" Elias asked. She hesitated. "Victorious," he shook his head. "No, it would make me the reason this war starts again." That night, Salith accessed the human data network. No one stopped her. That alone shocked her. Information in the concordance was controlled, ranked, filtered by status. Human history was not. She read about revolutions, about the fall of kings and queens, about wars fought to end ownership of people. She read about laws that limited power, even in wartime, about soldiers punished for following unlawful orders, about concepts that did not exist in her language. By the third day, messages began arriving from the concordance. Some were polite, others were not. Elias was ordered to prepare for a diplomatic review. The Cathari were concerned. The ritual was not proceeding as expected. Salith overheard one of the messages. "They think you are trying to humiliate us," she said quietly. Elias rubbed his face. "I'm just trying to get everyone through this without anyone else dying." She looked at him, truly looked at him for the first time. "You are dangerous," she said. He laughed softly. "Trust me, princess, I'm really not." She shook her head. "You are because you do not take what you are allowed to take." Outside the ship, the stars burned cold and distant. The war was over, but something else had begun. Neither side fully understood it yet. Elias just knew one thing. He had accepted a claim he did not believe in. And the universe was about to find out what humans did with power they refused to use. The days after the first messages were uneasy. The ship continued its slow journey toward a neutral station chosen for final negotiations, but the silence between transmissions felt heavier than gunfire. Staff Sergeant Elias Rourke kept to his routines. He checked supply reports, answered simple questions, and avoided thinking too deeply about how a human logistics soldier had somehow become part of an alien royal crisis. Princess Salith, however, thought about it constantly. She spent hours reading human records. She watched how humans interacted with each other. She noticed how rank mattered, but not in the way she understood. Orders could be questioned. Leaders explained themselves. Authority seemed tied to responsibility instead of dominance. This disturbed her. In the concordance, power was proof of worth. To refuse to use power was weakness. To give it up was unthinkable, yet Elias did both without hesitation. When the summons finally came, it was not a request. The concordance demanded a formal tribunal. Elias was ordered to present himself and the princess at the station. Human command agreed, though not without concern. They reminded Elias to follow protocol, to avoid provoking the other side. Elias listened, nodded, and promised nothing. The station was old, built long before the war. Human and Cathari vessels docked on opposite sides, like animals sharing water while watching each other closely. The tribunal chamber was wide and circular, designed so no one stood above another. That alone made several Cathari officials uncomfortable. Salith walked beside Elias as they entered. She wore simple clothing provided by the humans, not ceremonial armor. This was her choice. She no longer wished to be seen as a symbol. The Cathari Council was already assembled. Their glowing markings shifted sharply when they saw her. "You are compromised," one of them said immediately. "You stand dressed as a lesser being." Salith did not lower her gaze. "I stand as myself." Elias felt the tension rise. He stepped forward, careful with his words. "This tribunal was requested to review the ritual. Let's review it," the lead counselor spoke slowly. "The ritual was misused. The claimant has failed to assert authority. This undermines the purpose of the tradition." Elias nodded. "Then let's talk about the wording." The counselors hesitated. That was not how these sessions usually went. Elias activated a shared display. "Your ritual states that the claimed royal is placed under the care and honor of the claimant to prevent further bloodshed." "Yes," the counselor said, "care through control." "That part isn't written," Elias replied calmly. "Care through protection is." A low murmur spread across the chamber. Salith watched closely. She realized something then. Elias was not challenging them with force. He was using their own system against itself. You claim dishonor, Elias continued. But no harm has come to her, no coercion, no humiliation. The war did not restart. By your own laws, the ritual succeeded. That was not the intent, another counselor snapped. Elias shrugged. Intent doesn't outrank written law. Humans learned that the hard way. The counselors turned to Salith. You will return, the claim will be reassigned. She took a slow breath, her voice was steady. I will not. Shock rippled through the chamber. You cannot refuse, the lead counselor said. You are claimed. Salith looked at Elias, then back at her people. The claim binds the claimant, not the claimed. That is what your text says. The chamber fell silent. Elias felt a strange mix of pride and fear. He hadn't coached her, she had learned this herself. I have been protected, Salith continued. I have been given knowledge freely. I have not been owned. If this is what defeat looks like, then perhaps defeat has something to teach us. Anger flared among the hardliners. One rose abruptly. This is human corruption. Elias stepped forward again. No, this is choice, something you allowed when you wrote the ritual. The tribunal dragged on for hours. Arguments rose and fell. Threats were implied but never spoken aloud. Finally, the lead counselor raised his hand. The ritual is complete, he said unwillingly. The claim may be relinquished. Elias did not hesitate. I relinquish it. Salith felt the weight lift, though nothing physical changed. For the first time in her life, no one owned her future, not even in name. She spoke once more. I return to the concordance freely, not as a spoil, but as a witness. The counselors did not respond. They did not know how. When it was over, Elias felt exhaustion crash into him. He was escorted back to the human side without ceremony. No medals, no praise, just a firm handshake from his commander. You caused a diplomatic earthquake, she said quietly. Sorry, Elias replied. She smiled faintly. Don't be. Salith did not return immediately. She stayed long enough to speak privately with Elias one last time. You changed nothing, he told her. I didn't overthrow your system. She shook her head. You showed it a crack, that is enough. She paused. In my culture, victory is remembered forever, defeat is erased. Humanity does something else, you remember both. Elias shrugged. We mess up a lot. That may be your greatest strength, she said. They parted without ceremony. Elias returned to service. His life went back to quiet routines, supply runs, reports, long hours. The universe did not reward him. It did not punish him either. Far away, Salith stood before her people. She spoke of humans who refused to rule, soldiers who did not claim what law allowed, and power that was restrained instead of displayed. Some listened, some did not. Change came slowly, but it came. Years later, historians would argue about the end of the war. They would talk about fleets and tactics, treaties and borders. In alien texts, one footnote would remain. Humanity did not win by taking a princess. They won by proving that power did not need to be used to be real. It passed in a way that felt uneven across the stars. For humans, years moved forward with busy lives and small changes. For the concordance, time felt heavier, slower, shaped by tradition and memory. The events of the tribunal did not fade. They settled deep, like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples that refused to stop. Elias Rourke did not follow the news closely at first. He returned to ordinary duty, just another name on a roster. His days were filled with schedules, cargo checks, and problem reports. He slept in narrow bunks, drank bad coffee, and complained about faulty equipment like everyone else. No one treated him like someone important. That suited him just fine. But the universe had not finished with him. The first sign came in the form of a request, not an order. Human command asked Elias to attend a briefing. That alone made him uneasy. Requests usually meant trouble. The room was small. A few officers sat around a table, their expressions serious but not hostile. You remember Princess Salith, one of them said. Elias nodded. Hard to forget. She has become influential, the officer continued. More than anyone expected. Elias frowned. Influential how? The officer activated a display. Reports filled the air. Political debates inside the concordance. Public challenges to old laws. Questions about rituals that had never been questioned before. All tied back to her experience with humanity, the officer said, and to you. Elias leaned back slowly. I didn't tell her what to do. That's exactly the problem, another officer replied. You didn't. The concordance had not changed overnight. Many leaders resisted fiercely. But Salith spoke calmly, clearly, and with authority that came not from force but from understanding. She described humans not as conquerors, but as a mirror. Some called her dangerous. Others called her necessary. Tension grew, border incidents increased. Not attacks, but tests, ships moving too close, signals sent and ignored, the kind of pressure that came before something broke. Elias was asked to help again. This time he said no. "I'm not a diplomat," he said. "I'm not a symbol. I got lucky once." "You're a variable," Command replied. "One the Concordance can't predict." That bothered Elias more than he expected. Far across space, Salith faced her own battles. She stood in halls where voices echoed with anger. She was accused of weakening the Concordance, of inviting chaos. She listened without raising her voice. "I did not bring human ideas," she told them. "I brought human behavior. The ideas already existed. You simply never tested them." Some leaders wanted her silenced. Others feared what would happen if they tried. The Concordance was built on hierarchy. If one princess could refuse ownership and return stronger, what did that mean for everyone else? When violence finally came, it did not come as war. It came as an assassination attempt. Salith survived, barely. The news reached Elias weeks later. He stood frozen as he read the report. She was alive, but the message was clear. The old system was striking back. That night, Elias did something he had avoided for years. He volunteered. Human Command did not argue this time. The meeting was arranged quietly. A neutral outpost. No press, no ceremony. Elias arrived wearing a standard uniform, nothing special. He felt out of place again, which he took as a good sign. Salith entered from the opposite side. She walked with a slight limp now, but her eyes were sharper than ever. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "Probably," Elias replied, "but here I am." They spoke privately for hours, not about strategy or power, but about consequences. "I did not expect this path," Salith admitted, "but now that it exists, I cannot ignore it." Elias nodded. "Humans are bad at ignoring things once we see them too." The solution they reached was simple and therefore terrifying to everyone else: transparency. Salith proposed an open assembly. Not just leaders, not just nobles, observers, citizens, recorded and shared. She would speak and humans would answer questions openly. Many warned this would collapse the Concordance. Salith agreed. If it cannot survive honesty, then it is already collapsing. The assembly changed everything. Questions were asked that had never been allowed before. Why rituals mattered more than lives. Why power flowed only one way. Why defeat was feared more than injustice. Humans did not preach. They explained. They admitted failures. They showed records of their own mistakes, their own revolutions, their own long struggles. Elias spoke once. "I didn't save anyone," he said simply. "I just didn't use power I didn't believe in." That line spread faster than any speech. There was backlash, there always was. Some worlds withdrew, some leaders resigned, some systems fractured, but war did not come. Instead, something harder took its place: change. Years later, Elias stood on a quiet observation deck, watching ships move freely between human and concordant space. No escorts, no ritual distances, just traffic. He had been offered promotion many times. He declined most of them. He taught instead. New soldiers. "Young officers, what did you do to end the war?" one asked him once. Elias thought for a moment. "I didn't end it," he said. "I just refused to win the wrong way." Across the stars, Salith became something her people had never named before. Not a ruler, not a rebel, a bridge. History would never agree on the details, but one truth remained steady. Humanity did not conquer the Concordance. They unsettled it. And in doing so, they reminded the galaxy that the most dangerous thing a human could do was look at power and choose not to take it. The galaxy settled into a strange kind of quiet after the changes. It was not peace in the way treaties described it, but it was not war either. It was a pause where everyone watched everyone else, unsure of what the next step should be. Elias Rourke grew older in that pause. His hair turned gray at the edges. His knees complained more than they used to. He was no longer sent to the front lines or even close to them. Instead, he spent his days teaching logistics and ethics to young soldiers who had grown up hearing his name without fully understanding why it mattered. He never let them call him a hero. "I didn't do anything special," he would say. "I just followed rules that humans had already paid for in blood." Some believed him, some didn't. That was fine. Far away, Princess Salith, no, simply Salith now, stood before a concordance that barely resembled the one she had been born into. Titles still existed, but they carried less weight. Rituals still happened, but they were questioned. Power was no longer invisible and absolute. It had to explain itself. That made many uncomfortable. One world in particular refused to change. It was a border system, wealthy and proud, ruled by a council that believed fear was the only true glue holding society together. They had tolerated the reforms only because open resistance would have drawn attention. Now they moved quietly. They gathered ships. They trained loyal forces. They spoke of restoring order. The first incident was small. A civilian transport was seized. No one was harmed, but the message was clear. The old ways were not finished. Salith knew what was coming before anyone else admitted it. She requested human observers, not soldiers, observers. Human command hesitated. Sending troops would escalate. Sending no one would look like abandonment. They sent Elias. He protested, of course, loudly. "This is political theater," he said. "I'm not a shield." "No," command replied. "You're a reminder." The journey took weeks. Elias had too much time to think about age, about consequences, about how a single choice had followed him across decades. When he arrived, Salith greeted him without ceremony. She looked older too. Stronger in a quieter way. "They want you to legitimize them," she said, "or to provoke them." Elias sighed. "Figures." The council of the rebellious system met in a grand chamber, full of sharp angles and heavy symbolism. They spoke with confidence, accusing the concordance of weakness and humanity of manipulation. "You taught us nothing," one of them said to Elias. "You merely confused us." Elias listened patiently. When it was his turn, he did not argue. "I didn't teach you," he said. "I didn't confuse you either. I just showed you a choice you didn't like." That angered them more than insults ever could. They threatened separation. They hinted at violence. They waited for fear. It didn't come. Salith spoke next. Her voice carried across the chamber, calm and steady. "You believe strength comes from control," she said, "but control only lasts until people stop believing in it." The council dismissed the meeting shortly after. That night, ships moved. Alarms spread across the system. Not attacks, but blockades, pressure. A slow tightening meant to force submission without open war. Human command prepared responses. Concordance forces mobilized defensively. Elias watched it all from a station window, feeling a familiar weight settle in his chest. "This ends badly," he said. "Not if we are patient," Salith replied. Patience, it turned out, was the hardest weapon of all. Weeks passed, trade slowed, supplies thinned. The rebellious council expected panic. They expected anger. Instead, something unexpected happened. Citizens began asking questions. Why were they isolated? Why were ships stopped? Why were old rituals suddenly enforced again? Information spread faster than fear ever had. The open assemblies Salith had created worked both ways. People compared. They remembered. The council tightened control. That was their mistake. Protests began, not violent, just visible. The council demanded action. The military hesitated. No one wanted to be the one who fired first. Finally, the council tried to seize Salith. Human observers stood between them. Not with weapons raised. With cameras, every order, every threat, every contradiction was recorded and broadcast. The council's authority collapsed in days. There was no great battle. No heroic last stand, just resignations, arrests, and a quiet surrender. Elias sat down hard after it was over, exhausted beyond words. "I'm too old for this," he muttered. Salith smiled. "You were too old for it the first time." After that, the galaxy seemed to exhale. Reforms continued, uneven but real. Borders softened. Trust grew slowly, painfully, but it grew. Elias returned home for the last time. He retired officially, though nothing about his life changed much. He still taught, still corrected bad paperwork, still drank bad coffee. One evening, he received a message. No title, no ceremony. Just thanks. He stared at it for a long time before replying with a single line. "Take care of it." Years later, long after Elias was gone, children on multiple worlds would learn about the war, about fleets and treaties and politics. But one lesson appeared again and again, told in different ways. Humanity was dangerous not because they were strong, but because, when given the chance to dominate, they sometimes chose not to, and that choice changed the galaxy forever.